So basically, this is my theory on it, that terrorism is basically being used as extortion for global redistribution of wealth and, to force us into wars and costly wars and eventually a world government. Because, a word that they always mention is a unipolar world. That Putin seems that's be like a buzzword, that the unipolar world, that they don't want a unipolar world.
Yeah, that's a buzzword for the U.S. dominance, or what the Chinese call U.S. hegemony.
Right.
Well, first of all, terrorism serves many purposes. The Soviets as strategists and their Chinese allies and the communists in general, they never create a strategy or a thing that only serves one purpose. It's sort of like they make everything do double, triple, quadruple duty. So when you say, for example, terrorism serves this purpose of sort of being an extortion from the third world, yes, this creates guilt in the first world that we need to transfer our wealth to the third world and to give all this money, and it creates this kind of, you're a racist if you don't open your borders, let all these people flood in. So you're kind of creating kind of chaos through these demands.
Right.
But terrorism, from a military point of view, the creation of all kinds of terrorist fronts associated also with national liberation movements in the third world, like the PLO, for example, the creation of these fronts by the Soviets and these terrorists is ultimately, all of these things are experiments in creating terrorist groups like Suvorov talks about that have no apparent connection to international communism, that can then attack the West, particularly the United States, with weapons of mass destruction, and the United States will not know it is being attacked by Russia and or China. And we will, you see, because look, ever since the development of nuclear weapons and their mass manufacture and putting them on ICBMs, you have this balance of terror, where if they fire their nuclear weapons at us, we fire back at them and nobody wins. But so how do you get around that? If you don't know who's attacking you with nuclear weapons, you cannot retaliate, and it doesn't matter if you have a big arsenal.
Right.
So the development of these terrorist networks is very important for this military reason, in addition to the reason that you cited.
Well, hey, I have a quote. This is from your website. This is on jrnyquist.com's his website. And it's called, it says here, in 1998, I asked a former Russian intelligence official how Moscow might successfully pull off a surprise nuclear attack against the United States without suffering a devastating retaliation. He replied without hesitation, saying, if you ever hear that Arab terrorists have attacked an American city with nuclear weapons, don't believe it. The attack, he said, would be from Russia. J.R. Nyquist.
That's right, yeah. That conversation happened. I was standing outside of Potomac Television with the highest-ranking military defector from Russia, who was at one time a military debriefer for Gorbachev and who had access to Soviet and Russian plans, strategic plans and thinking. And, I wanted to know how could you get away with a surprise nuclear attack without retaliation? And that was his answer to me. If you ever hear that Arab terrorists have attacked an American city with nuclear weapons, don't believe it. And my thing to him was, well, why shouldn't I believe it? And he said, because it will be my people. It will be Spetsnaz. And I said, well, then what happens then after this attack? He said, then within so many weeks or months, the missiles from Russia will come. In other words, to finish off what they have to finish off. But the precursor attacks in Great Terror are to sow confusion, to decapitate the American leadership, and make it so that America cannot retaliate against an open missile strike from Russia and or China. You got to understand, this was explained to me by this guy, the Russian-Chinese alliance is very important to understand. Russia provides the missile power. China provides the manpower. China can have massive armies. Russia supplies the massive missile firepower that blows open the opportunity. And what's most powerful about these countries is not their economies, is not their weapons, but their intelligence services and their links with the communist movements in the various countries, especially here in the United States, because this is how they infiltrate. This is how they get into our defense establishment. There is not one military secret, I believe, that they have not stolen. There is not one political party that is not thoroughly penetrated, corrupted, with major figures blackmailed by them. I mean, you look at journalists. I have been told that major newscasters that you see on TV every night have been recruited by these foreign intelligence agencies. And so the fact that the head, this thing, Aldrich James, the guy who was in charge of watching the Russians for the CIA, was a Soviet agent. Robert Hansen, who was in charge at the FBI of watching the Soviets and the Russians, was a Soviet/Russian agent. I mean, the number one people in the FBI and CIA for protecting us from Russia were their agents. We know this already. What about the people we didn't find? I mean, this is just the tip of an iceberg here.
Yeah, and I forget. I think it was Suvorov that said that it's much cheaper to buy a journalist than it is to buy a politician.
Oh, yeah. No, journalists are, I asked this one Russian defector, I said, well, what kind of people in America did you recruit as spies? And I'm sitting in a room full of journalists talking to him, and he looks around and he says, journalists.